Mercury poisoning makes birds act homosexual. So metal may influence sexual development in white ibises, experts say. See? And so he said basically the male birds that eat mercury contaminated foods such as like shrimps and you know shellfish and things like that show surprising, and they actually highlight that surprising, like we're not really surprised, homosexual behavior scientists have found. So basically we see that, and I'm not going through this whole thing, but so they did an experiment. The male pairs did everything that heterosexual pairs would do. They mated and copulated together and on a nest, even though there were no eggs, and they did that for the whole 9 yards. So they also found that they wanted to do this one experiment. They said the prey animals that take up mercury that has been long seeped into the Everglades, this is in Florida, as a byproduct of industrial processes such as waste and incineration. Okay, so this is in Florida. Contaminated birds produce fewer babies. So during a 5 year experiment, uh, during the study period, male and female birds were allowed to choose their mates, an experimental first, according to the study's authors say. So all of the studies, they put the male and the female bird in the cage together. This time they put male and females together and they allowed them to choose their own mates, starting at around 90 days of age. These three groups were fed a diet containing either low, medium, or high amounts of mercury based on a realistic range of exposures in the wild. And then they had a fourth group that they did not feed any mercury, right? So once the birds had reached sexual maturity at around a year old, so this is their puberty time. See, this doesn't happen and really kick in until the puberty time. So homosexual and bonding increased in all three exposed to mercury. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about homosexuality is natural. It's not, we want to pretend like pollution doesn't exist. So we may show some birds behaving homosexually or some lions behaving homosexually, but we pretend like pollution doesn't exist. So anyway, and you guys are going to read this and deal with this. Whoever looks at this, mercury pollution is the oldest traces found in Peru. Okay, so that's something else. So they did not. What they didn't do. Let's see here. Mercury is known as an endocrine disruptor, which is a substance that mimics or blocks the production of natural estrogen. In this case, exposed male birds' bodies produce more estrogen than testosterone as compared with the control birds. So they say the hormones can't if account for the hormone itself can't account for sexual development, but it plays a role. And they did not do an experiment trying to see that if the mercury was cleaned out of the bird's body and testosterone was put back, would that reverse the behavior? They didn't do an experiment doing that. And so that's one. Mercury, this is another study by Boyd E. Haley, PhD, in 2005. And it says, abstract mercury toxicity and intoxication are realities that every American needs to face. Both environmental protection agencies and National Academy of Science, between 8 to 10% of American women have mercury levels that would render any child they gave birth to, they would give them neurological disorders. 1 in 6 of the children in U.S. have neurodevelopment disorder, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Yet our dentistry and medicine continue to expose all patients to mercury. This article discusses the obvious sources of mercury exposure that can be easily prevented. It also points out genetic susceptibility and exposures to other materials that synergistically enhance mercury and ethyl mercury sources. See, so you got mercury and ethyl mercury, which is what's inside of that vaccine. So that by their existence prevent the actual determination of a safe level of mercury exposure for all. The mercury sources we consider from dentistry and from drugs, mainly vaccines, that in today's world are not only unnecessary sources, but also sources that being increasingly recognized as being significantly deleterious to the health of many. So they're poisoning you. And I put this in Boy E. Haley, PhD, mercury toxicity, genetic susceptibility, and synergistic effects. So this is showing how when the brother said that the estrogen may offer a limited amount of protection for the female, but these females they have so much, they are so toxic with mercury that any child that they give birth to would be would would be neurologically damaged child. They would have a birth defect. Okay, and this is what it's talking about with the autism situation. This is, like I said, about 2005. But we'll go. Yeah, yeah, y'all can go into most of this yourself. You know, and I'm gonna get back to this, and then the brother's gonna go into the effects of gamma, effects of light and melanin, and how that affects our black godhood. Is going to go into that. And this is just talking about a study. It's talking about how radiotropic fungi, which gamma, which is radiation, gamma rays and radiation, which is basically just a higher, a part of the invisible light. It's light energy, but it's just something that we can't see. But it's called radiation, and how the melanin inside of these funguses 10 years ago was discovered to, this is 2017, so this was over 13 years ago, was discovered in the radioactive situation over there in Russia, which is Chernobyl, Ukraine. And so it's talking about how these they don't understand what the biological process of that situation is, on how the melanin is transferring the gamma rays into energy and feeding the life. But this is, I would suspect that that's something to do with our how the universe is formed and everything, and how life formed. All right, peace. And just listen to what the brother got to say here. He's gonna finish off, Wesley.